very first crisis in air pollution was in 1285, and this occurred because coal had started to replace wood as a fuel in London. This coal had a very strange smell, so people almost immediately feared that it would cause disease. The government responded by banning that coal. It simply said, you can't use the coal.
History records that anyone grievously fouling the air should be hanged at this spot where William Wallace met his end. Nobody ever was. Even in the 13th century, there was a growing industrial lobby. Manufacturers of the day ignored restrictions on the burning of coal, and for the next 400 years, the air in London steadily worsened.
In the 1600s, if you had a week of very intense fog, and they often called them great stinking fogs because they were so thick, they smelt bad, the air was stale, horses ran against each other in the streets because they couldn't see each other. And in a week like this in the 1600s, you might expect excess deaths of 300 or so. The cause of death was assigned by women called the searchers, who went into houses, inspected the bodies, and made some kind of assignment as cause of death. In cases of lung disease, the most notable was a disease called phtisic, where the victim spat blood. And phtisic might rise from no deaths a week from phtisic to perhaps 50 deaths from phtisic in a single week of intense fog.
London is never clear of this smoke, which is a plague, and indeed intolerable because it kills not at once, but always, and is worse than even death itself.
John Evelyn, the famous diarist, saw that you could actually statistically analyze data and show, factually, there was a relationship between death rates in London and the pollution that resulted from the burning of coal.
I propose, therefore, that by an act of this present Parliament, this infernal nuisance be reformed, and that all these works be removed 5 or 6 miles distant from London.
Evelyn's vision of a cleaner London could have been realized in his lifetime, when the old city was burnt down in the Great Fire of 1666. But by the time London was rebuilt, smokestacks towered over the monument to the dead. The Industrial Revolution turned London into the most powerful city in the world. Its furnaces fueled an empire.
The interests of the few are opposed to the interests of the many. 100 gentlemen connected with these different furnaces wish to make 2 million of their fellow citizens swallow their smoke.
In 1873, 700 Londoners died in a single week of fog. In 1880, 2,000 were killed.
Such are the results, more fatal than the slaughter in many a great battle, of a want of carefulness in preventing smoke in our domestic fires.
By the turn of the century, the city was shrouded for 90 days of every year, and London became intrinsically linked with its bizarre and multicolored fogs.
In the year of 1895, a dense yellow fog settled down upon London. From the Monday to the Thursday, I doubt whether it was ever possible from our window in Baker Street to see the loom of the houses opposite.
Conan Doyle's descriptions are of droplets that were yellow and oily. T.S. Eliot talks about it like a yellow cat, curling itself around buildings. So we have very, very sort of keen and accurate descriptions of the kind of yellowness in the fog of London at this time.
The great painter Claude Monet came to London specially to paint the colours of London fog in the winter. And he thought that the combination of colours, brown, he listed them, brown, orange, yellow, grey, black. It was wonderful, and changing as the sunlight came through them and so on. I mean, he was fascinated with the changing light that these pollution particles caused.
Just look at the dominance of the factory chimney right along the back of the river. I'm sure that when Monet finally arrived in London and saw something like this was exactly what he wanted. The sense in which the fog sort of simplifies the whole scene and makes it almost an abstract painting. Impressionist painters throughout the late 19th century had their canvases dominated by factory chimneys in the background, and this creates a sort of impression of what kind of society it is.
In the 20th century, it was a society where up to a third of all children in Britain's cities suffered from fog-related diseases.
My chimney is adding to the pall which hides the children of London from the ultraviolet radiation of the sun. If they don't get enough sunlight, they will develop rickets. Now these children here are getting artificial ultraviolet radiation in order to protect them from rickets.
We used to call it sunlight treatment. You'd sit around in a circle and you'd have these dark glasses or goggles on, and this light would be flashing all the time. It was quite a novelty, really. You thought, when you went to school next day, you made up hair-raising stories about actually what happened to you, but nothing really happened. You just sat there staring at the light.
We can't always guarantee him sunshine, but there's plenty we could do about this. Two proverbs occur to me when I look at a modern industrial city. Where the sun enters, the doctor doesn't. And the funeral coach comes twice as often to the shady side of the street. We'll spend thousands on a building, dirty it, then wash it, till it stands out, as someone said, like a bride at a funeral.
Window cleaning is a dirt trade. Soot clings to windows. It sticks to people's faces. Some beauty specialists regard the cosmetics industry as mainly another dirt trade. To a great extent, laundering is another dirt trade. And if the housewife complains, she knows that her own chimneys are partly to blame.
Every year, approximately 75,000 tons of soot falls on London.
Now, I have here the amount of smoke in the air breathed by an average Londoner in a year. Terrible sight. Well, what can be done about it? Well, most of this comes from the domestic fire, and it is those of us who like to sit around the smoky fire that are responsible for this very great difference. So it's up to the lounge customers to do something about it. Exactly.
I love the old open fire. If you're a bit lonely, you're sitting by yourself, it's like having a companion. Just like you'll talk sometimes to your cat, you can sit and talk to the fire. You're talking to something that is actually living. That is why I love a fire.
Here is the main source of atmospheric pollution, producing more smoke per ton than any other appliance in use. Worse than industry.
Londoners' love of an open fire was officially blamed for most of the city's pollution. But there was another culprit. Government maps show how the worst pollution clouds radiated in fallout zones around the city's power plants during the 1952 disaster. 25 years earlier, the government encouraged the building of these power plants in the centre of London.
Not far from the Thames embankment, a giant skeleton of steel is going up.
3 huge stations were built at Southwark, Battersea and Kingston. The last of their smokestacks was fired up just 4 years before the 1952 fog.